because I see a lot of advisors, they have like all their prospects in one system or Excel spreadsheet or something. I know.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Like, wow. This is the 21st century.
Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. Brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners, it's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. Learn more and subscribe today at eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast. And now, here's your host, Frank LaRosa.
Hey everybody, welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. I am your host, Frank LaRosa, and I have a very, very special guest today that is going to blow your mind. And hopefully we don't go down to too many technology rabbit holes, which we both love to do. Anyway, today I'm joined by our Chief Information Officer, Sue Cheema. Welcome.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Frank.
How you doing?
Doing well.
Okay.
Yeah.
You nervous?
So nervous.
It's all good. It's all good. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, like Sue, we appreciate you joining the show. And our show is really designed, just like it says, Advisor Talk, to be a conversation about stuff that's going on in the business, stuff that as advisors you should be aware of, educational, and we hope you enjoy the show. And it's really basically conversations that we're having with advisors on a day-to-day basis. So fairly unscripted, and we hope you enjoy it. And so today, I asked Sue to come on the show, and she's our Chief Information Officer, and really like the wizard or the Jedi. I call her like our Salesforce Jedi, right? If you're watching us on YouTube, you'll understand this. Like, she can just like sort of wave her hands and make stuff happen with our database systems, right? And many of you have heard us talking with Stacy about some of the things that you should be thinking about as it relates to building your company and your brand and some automations and workflows. And you might hear what those things are. Maybe you don't know what they are. You hear them, right? So today, though, I asked her to talk about really 3 simple strategies to automate parts of the business that I believe are missing with a lot of advisors and practices that I come across. And so I look at data, and I think that people need to start understanding data because there's a lot of conversations about valuations and what's my business worth and all that other stuff. And everyone talks about advisory business and AUM. One of the things they don't talk about is data processes, and data integrity that increase the value of your business. Because if you're a buyer, think about it. Would you be willing to pay more money for a business where the data was clean and you were able to import hundreds of pieces of information about all those clients into your existing database and not have to get corrupted and not have to sort of recreate the wheel? The answer to that question is yes, because we see it all the time in our M&A practice. So today you're going to talk about 3 main things. Yeah. One of them is a little more robust, which is sort of like building an onboarding practice, right? On onboarding workflows. The second one is RMDs, required minimum distributions, and how to automate that. And then the third one, which I thought was interesting, which is really K1 delivery and tracking, which I think, and as you know, you've been working with RIAs for a long time. Yeah. So let's just start first by giving the audience. Obviously, that you work for Elite Consulting Partners as our CIO, so they already know that you're probably pretty good at what you do, right? But what was your background? Like, what were you doing before?
So I've been consulting for about 15 years, and my passion is automation, right? Like essentially taking an internal process for a firm and making it just efficient, like work better, do more with less, and not have to think about, all the nitty-gritty of getting that work done.
Right. Yeah, I know that I can speak firsthand that the way our system runs, we have a very, very robust Salesforce system, not just Salesforce, but also technology that plugs into Salesforce. Yep. And the things that she's been able to do with our system have been amazing. And as she's learned over the last couple of years working with us, the better she makes our system, the more stuff I want her to do, right? Because it's like learning a new language. All of a sudden, you get sort of addicted to improving it, right? And how can we take a process and make it one click less, right? Or candidly push data, dashboards, which is one of the things we didn't really we're not going to talk about today, but really dashboards and analytics, right?
Yeah.
We might talk about that under the data integrity component, but let's talk about the onboarding component, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that most advisors, I'll just say wing it, right? And when I mean wing it, you might have a staff, you might have like, hey, when a new client comes on board, these are the things that we do, but it's never automated.
Never automated. I actually worked at an RIA and a client that wanted to automate the entire process, like from start to end, because a lot of times you could automate parts of a process, but not end-to-end process. So there's still parts that, some folks would have to go in and click here, upload there. So for onboarding, we were able to, from the time a client signs a DocuSign contract, for it to feed into Salesforce and then create predefined tasks that are then completed by internal staff, assigned to internal staff. And then through custodial integration as well, it'll feed in like, oh, these accounts are funded, we have client information, and then you're able to kind of keep on top of everything that's needed to truly and efficiently onboard a client. We were able to take their process from 15 minutes per application to 3 minutes.
Just to get the client signed on board.
Correct.
Right. Have you found that like I look at this, time is money, right? We use that expression, time is money. And when I talk to advisors and I ask them, well, how long does it take you from opening an account, right, to getting it funded and billed?
Yeah.
And most of them don't even know the answer to that. They're like, I don't know, maybe a month or so, right? A couple weeks, right? Is there something that they can when you turn about onboarding,
right,
like are those the types of things that they can create workflows and process? Number one, that's one question, right? So how do you go about doing that?
So if most advisors and associates or client service managers know what the tasks are, they know on the top of their head, like, okay, once the application is signed, this is what I have to do. What we can do systematically is understand what the outline is, and based on certain triggers, which humans use, right? Like, oh, I got the application, this is the next step. We systemize it. So we build cognition into systems.
Okay.
If
it's a fancy word, cognition, right? It's like maybe a 25-cent word. So client opens an account, or you open an account.
Yeah.
They send in the paperwork. What you're saying is that you can build automatic tasks that go to different service people on your team.
Yep.
Right.
Yep, they could be assigned.
So, in my world, so when I was a complex director, manager, whatever, advisor, the process was client opens an account, great, we get all the information. I sort of handed it to someone on the team, who then maybe opened it, the account right away. Maybe it didn't get open for 3 or 4 days. Then you find out that it's missing paperwork, and so then you got to go track that down.
Go back to the client. They have to recomplete the information.
And you get who did it?
Exactly.
Whose responsibility was it? Wasn't my responsibility. I thought you were doing it. No, I thought you were doing it. You told me that you were going to go reach out to the client.
Right.
Blah 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 blah. Is that the kind of stuff that can get automated? And then the other piece is, and then it's like, okay, now you get the accounts in, so you send up new account paperwork to the managed account department, and then as an advisor, you sort of go on your way, right? And then 2 weeks goes by or 3 weeks goes by, and the account still hasn't even been opened or funded yet.
Yep. So that's integration with the custodian, right? Like, essentially, what some of the teams I've worked with in the past have done is they literally have the CRM open, and they have the custodial applications open, and they're literally copy-pasting each information.
Oh.
Like, that's
Ouch.
Painful. Exactly. So what we can do is integrate the two, and the information entered once in the CRM could feed into the custodial application. It gets submitted, the funds get opened, it feeds into the CRM. So there's this back and forth systematically where you kind of do the first step and you don't have to keep doing it over and over again. So we remove the redundancies as well.
Okay. Awesome. But then so from there, what about, in my mind, if I'm opening accounts as an advisor, once that's done, I then want to have other service-related automations beyond that, right?
Yeah.
Like most clients, like 30 days later, there should be some type of task assigned to somebody that they either call the client or they do a statement review or things like that. Have you worked with teams that do that?
I often say that if you can list out the things that need to happen, we can automate it. Right? That's the cognition.
Which is, by the way, why I call her a Jedi, because she basically, if you can think about it, like, hey, I would love for her to do this.
And she's like,
I can make that happen. Yeah, right. You're like, I can. Yes, you will. Right. Right. You don't need to question these droids.
Love it. Yeah, and I love doing that aspect of it, right? Like if you come to me and say, Sue, like these are the 10 things that, because some of the processes are curated to each RIA, right? Like they want to make it somehow different. The client experience is a little bit different.
Right.
And so that's where we can customize their internal workflow and create automation around it. So as long as they can define an outline, I can systematize.
Okay.
Yeah. So if they say send a welcome package, complete the application, link with the custodian, I can look at those steps and I can say, all right, done. Like this is what's needed and we can make it happen.
Got it. So really the benefit, if you're an advisor listening to this, the real benefit, the persons or people that are going to benefit the most is the staff.
Of course.
Right. I mean, obviously the client, because the experience is going to be better.
Well, once the staff has more time to engage with the clients instead of doing all this paperwork over and over again, then like the clients feel the presence more, right? Like the firm, the advisors get stickier.
Right.
Right? And they have better relationship with their clients. There are no gaps, right? You're not missing information. You're not like having to do it 500 times because you have.
Well, think about it too. Even as a staff person, like you just said something, like if you're an advisor, you have practice and you've had a really good, I'll just say sort of solid support person that knows how to do it, right? And he or she's been doing it, I'll just say manually, right? But they've been doing it a long time, so they just know their shit, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they leave.
Exactly.
Now what happens, right? Now you have to bring somebody else in and you don't have any processes in place and you're having to then retrain that person. So by having automations and, when I talk about automations and data equals money, this is one of the things that I'm talking about.
The key person risk.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. By creating these automations, you are really eliminating that key person risk.
Correct.
And I guess is this process, have you felt that or found that when you're working with these teams, the process that you started with, does it evolve over time?
I find
as they're
that
tweaking it?
Of course. I think what happens is once they see draft 1 or the first iteration of automation, they're like, oh my God, this is great. Let's make it even better. Once we get there, then it's like...
Just this last 3 years you spent dealing with me doing that.
But I love it.
This is awesome, right? Can we do it this way?
Right. And I mean, with the introduction of AI, right, like as that gets like more immersed into platforms, like we could even take it a step further.
Okay, well,
which
that'll
is
be
like,
a different podcast.
Yeah,
we'll have a different podcast on the AI component because I know that you love that stuff. So,
I love that stuff.
Yeah, we will do that on another podcast for sure. So that's interesting. So what about when we talk, again, onboarding and client maintenance? What I found a lot of times too when I'm talking to more RIAs in particular is they have a lot of really good technology, but to your point earlier, it's like, well, we have one system on one monitor, and we have another system on another monitor. Maybe it's Black Diamond, or they're using eMoney and Black Diamond and Ryan or whatever, and Salesforce or Redtail, God forbid. Not that I have anything wrong with Redtail, but whatever, it is what it is. or do you, when you talk about building processes, does it help to make, before you start this whole thing, make sure that the systems work together?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because
I'm glad I asked it.
the way I think about data and the direction of its flow is to understand where it's initiated and then use it for everything else. What do I mean by that?
Yeah, what do you mean by that? That was pretty good, though. You kept that really.
Yeah.
So, but just so you know, to the audience, like she knows her shit, right? So much so I'm like, hey, listen, when we talk about this stuff, I need you to explain it to like my level of education, which is like a 3rd grade level of education. So don't use big fancy words. So you've been pretty good so far.
Thank you, Frank. I'm trying. But the way I think about it is I will oftentimes create like a data flow. So I'll say, okay, what happens? When is the first time you capture all the information related to a client or a prospect?
Okay.
Cool. Which platform are you using to capture it? Cool. Now, where does it flow when they become a client? Where does it flow when, a life event happens, as in retirement or birth of a child or new job, right? Or new property, investment property. And how can we use that inception point for the data to flood it everywhere else and create efficiencies whereby for each platform, they aren't re-entering the same information over and over again.
Right.
And that's creating that ecosystem.
Okay. Wow. Got it. Yeah. So even like because I see a lot of advisors, they have like all their prospects in one system.
Yes.
Or Excel spreadsheet or something.
Ugh.
I know.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Like, wow. This is the 21st century. Like, come on, buddy. Yeah, but look, listen, this is why we're having this conversation, because I keep talking to advisors and I'm like, and some of them have like, they have a decent, I'll call it client data solution.
Yeah.
But their prospect data solution is awful.
Yeah.
Which is really the lifeblood and the future of their business.
System. Yep.
So you're saying you can connect the prospect component and integrate it into, so they're really, when they're working with a prospect and they have information, maybe not social security numbers, date of birth, stuff like that, but that once that information's in there, it can easily be moved over or duplicated or whatever.
That's the idea. That once the information, the KYC information, is entered in any platform, that it can literally flow into any other platform it's needed. And that's where the integrations come in. And oftentimes I like to, I think of it as a pyramid, right? Like the first step is always data integrity. Like stabilize your current system, make sure it has correct information, accurate information, relevant information, not like expired driver's license from 10 years ago, right? Relevant information that can now be used to, if they're opening a new account in the custodian, or even use the custodial information. If they're changing their address through integration from the custodian, we could get a notification in the CRM and say, oh, okay, let's make sure this person updated their address in the custodial platform. Let's make sure the CRM is also updated, or we can just actually get that information into the CRM directly.
Right, and you can automate that piece of it. They go and change their account. They go and change their address.
The idea
beneficiary
is
information.
all of it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I see that a lot where advisors miss, as from a client's perspective, they have these life events with kids and other things, and the advisors just fail to go back and update beneficiary information and all that stuff.
That's huge.
Right.
That's huge. Yep.
Well, it's a major problem, right?
It is, yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about. Well, you mentioned it, so we'll go to the last piece, and then we'll go back to RMDs and K1s. But you talk about data integrity, and I think this is one. I've had some conversations with some PE firms and I'll call them institutional buyers, both in our space, but also not in our space, just sort of other businesses. And what we've learned is that, if you don't manage your data, take care of your data, track your data, then you don't care about it.
Yeah.
And that actually decreases the value of your business.
Yeah.
And so when you think, when I say data integrity, what does that mean to you, and what should it mean to an advisor?
To me, it means that your information or the data that you rely on to do work for your clients is accurate and complete. And how do we make that happen? Right? Ideally, because I'm a big proponent of efficiency and reducing redundancy, we could use the custodial platform to feed information into the CRM so it's always up to date, right? Their age, their address, their things that often
phone numbers, emails.
Correct.
Yeah,
all of it,
all
right?
That, right.
So data integrity to me is the foundation that you can build everything else on.
You made a point or comment to me when we were talking about this, and you've done a great job with our system about sort of like unused fields.
Yeah.
And you know, this is a big deal because when you're in the M&A world, you know, when you're buying I had a call with, well, you were on the call. We had a call with an RIA, a large RIA that acquired several firms, and their issue was trying to figure out how to bring all the data together. I think they acquired 3 different firms, and so they're really operating on 4 different platforms, and they weren't sure how to do it.
Painful.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I think of data, but part of it was, and you mentioned this, was having all these different fields. Like, how do you know what fields are necessary, what fields you should be cleaning up?
Yeah. So the way I'll guide a lot of clients is, what is the objective behind fields? Because what happens is when you get a platform, you're like, oh, I want to capture this. Oh, I want to capture this. I want to capture what color is their favorite. Like,
right.
You know, and then it's like, wait, it could change often. And who becomes accountable to keep that updated over time? Because if it's red one year and yellow the next year, then you have outdated information.
Right, you have bad data.
Correct. So it's literally the foundation of everything. Analytics, automation, it's all reliant on accurate, up-to-date information pertaining to your clients.
But isn't more data better?
Not necessarily. I mean, could there be an objective or goal or KPI associated to color? Maybe. And that's where the curated part comes in. But oftentimes I find like the simpler the process and the collection of data, at least when you're starting it off, the better it is to maintain it.
Got it. So really, when they think about fields, they should really think about how often do you plan on using this field and what's the impact of having that field in the system.
Overall, yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Because then it clouds, and I know that we worked on this, you know, like there's only so much you can fit on one screen.
Yes.
Right?
And often people don't want to scroll all the way down to the page. The fields at the bottom are just like sitting there for years to come.
Right. So it's not really just a matter of the fields and the type of data, but it's how many fields.
Yes.
And
how it's
viewed,
laid out.
how it's laid out, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
So you've been able to help them with that, and I guess every CRM is different, right?
Yes.
Which we're not going to get into the CRMs. Maybe we'll do a different podcast about the comparisons between, you know, Redtail, Wealthbox, Salesforce,
Would love to.
and what's the other one? Zoho, and a bunch of others.
There's so many.
There's so many others. Well, what about in terms of data integrity and I don't know if it's data integrity, but it's information integrity or information, and that is, like you mentioned it, KPIs, right? I don't think advisors truly understand the types of reporting / dashboards they can create within Salesforce, and I'm saying Salesforce, but within us, because you can do the most with Salesforce.
Yeah.
But how have you seen firms use sort of data and analytics like that to help improve the business itself? Not necessarily workflows, but just, you know, improve the business.
So I worked at an RIA, and the joke was Sue loves data.
Yeah.
But information gathered is essentially business intelligence, right? The idea is, in the long run, that all the information that you're collecting is going to help you make intellectual business decision, how to grow it further.
Right.
And maybe the color that's favored one year isn't the information you need to do that.
Right.
So that's how I would think about KPIs.
Right. Right. Like, how many days does it take to, you know, like if you had a dashboard or a speed dial, think of it like a speed dial, right?
Yeah.
That your average days from open to funding is
47, whatever.
45 days.
Yeah.
You know, how do you get, knowing that information, how do you get that down to 30 days or 15 days, right? Because if you're an advisor, the faster you fund an account, a managed account, the sooner you start making money.
Yep.
It was interesting, and I bring that up because I've started to learn. I wish I knew this sooner, right? And fortunately I learned it soon enough. But I can tell the audience that the more data that Sue has been able to help us with, understanding the business, not just the faster the decisions that we've been able to make, but better decisions.
More informed
decisions,
Yeah.
both on the positive and the negative side.
Yeah.
Like there's some data that we've had that allowed us to make some decisions that really will end up saving us hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in certain expenses because we anecdotally knew, we thought we knew, right? But we didn't really know.
Yeah.
And when we really found out, we're like, holy beep.
Yeah.
You know, holy smokes. I'll edit myself out. So I think, and again, and so it goes back to automation and data equals money. Yeah. This is the kind of stuff that, forget about, you know, yes, valuations, but it'll help you make more money. It'll help you save money. I was at an event last year in St. Louis, and we was fortunate enough to get to talk with the number 3 guy at Amazon, who created Amazon Prime. That was his baby, right? Wow. And I asked him a question about data, and because my fear had always been like, paralysis by analysis, right?
Yeah.
And you know, at what point? My question was, at what point is too much data too much?
Yeah.
Right? And paralysis by analysis.
Yeah.
And his exact answer was, if you're collecting data to find an answer and you haven't found the answer yet, you don't have enough data.
Yep.
That was his
fair.
exact answer.
Yeah. Or you're collecting data that isn't relevant.
Right. You don't have you don't have enough data because you need to collect more data.
Yeah.
And he said at Amazon, we are obsessed with data.
Yeah.
That's all he says, we're basically, we deliver goods. We're basically a data company.
Yeah.
Which was, I thought was interesting. And you know, coming back from that, we've sort of ramped up a lot, and we've all of a sudden collected all this data. And now with, click of a few buttons, we can see the direction and flow of business. Required minimum distributions, RMDs. You put that on the list as sort of three sort of easy strategies to implement.
So ideally, from what I understand, and I'm not an advisor, like starting at 55, like clients need to be advised on what steps they should start taking to prepare for when they hit RMDs, right? Yeah. And like I have done email alerts directly to clients that have done like turned 55, 65, 70, 72, like all those, and the action items to the client and the action items to the advisor to start preparing the client, right? So and to track their age, because oftentimes like if you have 400 clients, like are you keeping track of all their birthdays and when they're turning 55 or 65 or 72? So if systematically we can filter out the data to say, hey, this month, these are the 5 clients that are touching 55. Make sure that you're sending them an email alert or getting in touch with them, or, whatever actions that you should be taking, we can set that up in a workflow.
Right. And also, I was just thinking, as you say that also could be a great time as part of that letter to start talking about like consolidation of retirement plans and hey, listen, in 5 years or whatever, 4.5 years, whatever, you're gonna have to start taking required minimum distributions.
Yes.
This is what we have, but they may not know, the advisor may not know that the client has 2 other accounts somewhere else, or an old 401k that they have to roll over.
Yep.
Right. So are you able to, within the system, create sort of automatic emails to clients.
Automatic emails to clients. Like,
Right
hey,
out of Salesforce or
right
whatever.
out of Salesforce. Yep. To say, hey, by the way, like, I know your birthday's coming up next month. Like, maybe we should set up something on the schedule. Like, here's the link to my calendar. Like, put something on the calendar. Like, you know.
So can you create it in a way where the email goes out and the advisor gets CC'd or the assistant gets CC'd?
Yes.
So they're not like caught out of the blue, like,
Not
hey,
at
I got
all.
your email, and the advisor's like, what
No.
email?
Yeah, because so in CRM, most CRMs, like, you have assigned teams, right? The teams are always copied in all email alerts that go out from a platform. So if a client says, hey, by the way, I got this email, like, you know, the team isn't like, oh, we didn't send you an email, right? They know exactly what the client is talking about. They know even within the system there could be prompts like, hey, by the way, this email
It's also
was
going to
sent
be in
to-
their activity history,
Exactly.
right? So,
Yeah.
right, they'll know.
Yeah.
So the advisor, you as an advisor, can go into the activity and see what email they got,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, to me, I know this sounds interesting, but RMDs, look, when we work with transitioning advisors, a lot of times when we get
Yeah.
into the end of the year, one of their reasons why they either need to postpone it or whatever is because they're like, I need to get all my RMDs done.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, I'm like, really? Like, how difficult is that?
I'm not sure if it's difficult. I think it's disorganized, if that's fair to say.
It's disorganized. It's
Yes.
manual. It's all manually driven.
Yes.
Right.
So it's not like rocket science, but oftentimes because it's postponed or pushed so back down that it's urgent. And then once it becomes urgent, then you start, you know, leaving things like
And it's really at
missing
the last
things.
minute because
Exactly.
it's because a lot of times clients will probably be more than willing to take their RMD sooner.
Of course.
If it was automated sooner, but the advisors realize, oh no, it's December. Clients got to start taking their distributions
Like now.
or 72Ts or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
they're doing. So, got it. All right, so that's number 2. Number 3 is sort of K1 delivery and tracking, and this is one that you've brought up to me a couple times.
Yeah.
And I never, as an advisor, I never really. I was at a wirehouse firm, so I never really had to deal with something like this. But in the RA space and the sort of do-it-yourself space, you seem to think that this is like an important one.
I do, and only because it's simple enough to be quickly. You could get ROI on that process really quickly, and it's essentially project and task tracking. Right? Which is to say, which are the clients based on the accounts that need to get a K1, connect with their accountants, make sure that they receive the K1s or distribute the K1s, and then all the tax information pertaining to a client is accurate. So that's huge because there's a direct impact to the client, but it's simple enough to implement. And
Right.
that's why I think it's a valuable process to implement.
And if they automate it, they're going to come across as being proactive
Yes.
to the clients, even though
Of course. Yeah.
the advisor probably didn't have any idea that they were doing it. But it comes across as being proactive to make sure that their CPA or accountant, whatever, is getting all that information or not, or they don't get it.
Yeah.
So they can reach out to the client. Because the last thing that an advisor wants to do is get a call from an angry, wealthy client saying, my accountant is waiting for you to get me the K1s. Where
Yeah.
are they? And you're like, I don't know. Let me go ask Jill.
Did she follow up with you?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's very difficult. So this is really interesting. And I think that there's a lot more here. There's a lot more to unpack. So we'll be doing more of these as part of our, it's like a Jedi Council kind of thing.
Love
right?
it.
Yeah. The Jedi Council, right? Advisor Talk, Jedi Council. You never know. You never know. TBD. So anyway, listen, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
My pleasure.
I think this was a lot. Actually, one other question. And this is sort of I don't know if this is a leading question but since we're talking about RIAs, like, doesn't Schwab help them with all this stuff?
No.
It's a trick question.
Of course they do know. No, but the
Or
key.
Salesforce?
No. Right. The idea is that once you buy a platform, you implement and manage it yourself. With custodial relationship, what's really cool is I've worked with a lot of major ones, and they do help integrate to a CRM. And that's the key, because a lot of that information
But they're not going to help you set up your CRM.
No, unfortunately not.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, what about like if they're using Black Diamond as an example? Will they? Because I know they'll help with the Black Diamond setup, but
Nothing
will they
else.
help with the integration?
Not so much. They
Okay.
can guide you, send you some SOPs, but essentially that's on you to do.
So they really got to either figure out how to do it themselves
Yeah.
or hire somebody.
Yeah.
Or hire maybe you.
Hire us.
Pretty cool. All right. That'd be a good idea. You should hire Sue, right? So with that said, let me ask this. If somebody has questions about their system, they just heard what you talked about and they're like totally confused and like, why aren't we doing any of these things? How do they get in contact with you?
Email myself or Frank, and Frank.
What's your email address?
Sue Cheema at eliteconsultingpartners.com.
Awesome. And of course, you can email me at frank@eliteconsultingpartners.com. There's a lot here. We are going to be doing a lot more of these videos, podcasts, because I believe someone that's been doing this for a long time, almost 30 years now, over 30 years, that this is a major, major problem in the space that no one is paying attention to, especially with more and more advisors going from the W-2 world where they have systems, not that they're any good, right? But in the W-2 world, and then that you go either independent or you go RIA, and you think that the firms that are out there are going to help you with this stuff, and they're not, right? You need to customize your system to your business for a whole host of reasons.
Yes.
Including valuation purposes,
Yeah.
and just simply making more money and ease of running a business.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be doing more of these because it's an important message. And we've touched on this particular area in several other podcasts, but I thought it was important enough that we're going to start having these and really covering one particular area and getting and letting you dive deep into it.
Love it.
Letting you go down that rabbit hole, right? Maybe we'll call it Advisor Talk Rabbit Hole.
I love this stuff, so absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well, it was great having you on.
Thank you,
You did
Frank.
a great job.
Thank you.
You're a keeper.
Yay.
And we'll see everybody next time.
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics in the financial services industry, or you just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcasts.